Hi, this is Roger Moore, and you're listening to James Bond Radio.
Hello, and welcome to episode number 153 of James Bond Radio. In this episode, we will be discussing the second part, the middle section of Tomorrow Never Dies. My name is Tom Sears, and I'm joined by my Bondian partner in crime, Mr. Christopher Wright. Say hello, Chris.
Hello, Chris.
How you feeling, buddy? You all right?
I am indeed, yes. So last week, part one, obviously first act, as it were, of Tomorrow Never Dies, which I thought we both thoroughly enjoyed it. I thought, it was a bang up sort of start to the film, lots of good action, some good dialogue, nice one-liners, great Q scene and all that sort of stuff. So I'm hoping, Tommy, that Act 2, the middle of the film, will live up to Act 1, because I did enjoy part 1. So, yeah, excited to see how part 2 goes. Really.
Yeah, me too. Absolutely. Good stuff. So before we crack on, come and do the social medias. Come and join us on Facebook. Come and join us on Twitter. Come and join us on Instagram. Come and join us on the website, jamesbondradio.com, where you can leave us a voicemail message with the button on the right-hand side. If you want a question or a trivia question or a quote or something else, you can send us a message and we might play it. Also, you can donate with the donate link if you feel like donating. Lovely. Righty-ho. Have we got a listener trivia question?
We do indeed. The listener trivia question of the day. I must say, Tom, that is the best one you've ever done.
Who is this trivia question from?
Okay. This trivia question is from long-time JBR listener, Mr. Simon Godwin.
Lovely stuff. Let's hear from Simon.
Hi, Chris. Hi, Tom. Simon Godwin here from Station N in Norwich. Loving the podcasts. I'm one of your original listeners. I'm sure you two are in line for OBEs, for services to Bond fans. So you guys are really stumped, and your knowledge is on a par with that of the Oracle. So here's my trivia question. How many modes of transport are used by Bond in The Spy Who Loved Me? I'll call back with the answer in a second. Thanks, and keep up the good work.
It's a good question. I can think of 4.
This is one of the questions that I normally ask you on the Bumper Boxing Day quiz.
I know. Which 15 things does Roger do in this film for 1 point?
I was a bit more. I was less of that this year.
You were. I was happy
year's.
with it. This year just gone. Yeah, absolutely. Good work.
Yeah.
Nice one, Simon. Good stuff. Lovely to see you're still with us after all this time. 5 years coming up, Chris. 5. That's a long time.
A long time. That is a long time.
I must say, like most loving relationships are over before the 5-year mark, aren't they? I feel like we've stuck it out this long, man. The rot's going to set in soon, I feel.
Yep. Well, I guess when was the last? So we're looking at what we're looking at. Have any Bond films ever had a 5-year gap? So Spectre, when did that come out? What year were we
that was
talking
October
about?
2015. Yeah.
And it's going to be
2020. Yeah.
Yeah, so there we go. That's the 5-year thing. So we're just following course of Bond, or rather, they're following us because obviously we came first. So,
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it's the way things go.
All right then, Chris. What do you think about that? Do you think you've nailed that? I can think of 4 modes of transport off the top of my head. Obviously, we'll answer it later, but I'm just thinking, are you on the case?
I've got. It's one that I'm going to have to sit down and basically play the film through my mind at high speed. I've got like a moviola set in between, and I just crank that up to high speed.
Nice. And
just like play it through, and I'm like ding, 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 and then see how many I can get.
Yeah. All right. Cool.
But yeah, I can think of a lot. Yeah.
Excellent. Oh, another one's just popped into my head. I've got 5. Lovely. Good stuff.
Nice.
All right then, let's get cracking with a bit of theme tune, and then we'll carry on our Tomorrow Never Dies discussion.
Who are you?
My name's Bond. James Bond.
Bond. James. Bond, what do you think you're doing?
Keeping the British hand up, sir.
Welcome to James Bond Radio. News, reviews, and discussion of all things 007.
Pussy. As you can see, I have no problem with females already.
Oh, pipe down, 007.
Do you expect me to talk? No, Mr. Bond, I expect you to goodbye.
Righty-ho. So where did we leave 007 last time, Chris?
So last time, I believe it was when Stamper had walked in on the soundproof room or the room next to it, and basically all the thugs were left on the floor, having been beaten by Bond, who gave Carver a little bit of a station break before making his exit.
Indeed. So we see him now on his way to the Atlantic Hotel, don't we?
This is it. So basically, Bond's waiting in his hotel. This is where it's that classic scene where it's a throwback to Dr. No. So Bond's waiting in his chair. He's got his little shot glass, hasn't he, with his Smirnoff vodka.
Yeah.
And if we're thinking a bit back to Dr. No, where he's waiting for Professor Dent, he's playing his cards and he's just waiting for him. Here, very, very similar setup. He doesn't know who Carver's going to send. He knows that Carver's onto him, so he's just waiting to see. He's got his vodka with him. He's got his PPK beside him, and he's waiting. And I like that. I think that's a nice little throwback.
It is lovely. I tell you what, there are two things outside of the usual, Bond with his dicky bow on in the outfit. There are two things that give me a little twitch in the downstairs department. Number one is when he's, dicky bow open neck, sitting in a chair, swigging on his vodka shots or whatever. That's one of them, particularly in this film. And the other one is in the naval costume. That gives me a little Bondian twitch down there. So
is it going to happen? Will Daniel be in a naval outfit in Bond 25? He has.
I've texted him several times and said, "Come on, make sure it happens." And he said he's going to try and make it happen. But it all depends on the script at the end of the day.
It does, but come on,
you will see. Now, I tell you what, man. I watched this with the missus, and when this bit came on, she went, "Oh, that is a handsome man." And I said, "All right, calm down." But then I also said, "I know, isn't he?" I don't think Bond has ever looked better, man. He is. I think. Do you know what? I'm going to put my flag in the sand here, and I'm going to say I think Pierce looks his best in this film. He looks fucking brilliant in this film. I don't care what anybody says. Like the little comma of hair over his eye just dangles perfectly. The hair length is much better this time.
Yeah, Golden Eye's a bit too long, wasn't it? A bit too Playboy.
Exactly, and it was, especially in the later scenes when they meet Jack Wade, where he lands the plane and stuff. It almost looks like he's been out there surfing. You know what I mean? And fair enough, but I don't think it's the right cut for Bond. This, bang on the money. Really, really enjoy that look. And do you know what? He's sitting there in his chair, and she comes in the door, and that look he gives her when she comes in, like that is a man who's got some deep thoughts on his mind. Do you know what I mean? It's like just that is a striking image. And we saw that on the wall at Stoke Poges, didn't we, when we went there last summer?
Well, we actually recreated that scene, didn't we? Well, not that anyone's dressed up in stockings and high heels, but we did the whole sort of sat in the chair, positioned it in the same place in the ballroom, and gave our best Brosnan sort of impression with some dirty pouting.
Smolder. Yeah, absolutely. That was cool, wasn't it? Because we were wandering around Stoke Poges, and then we saw the room from the outside, and there was some like ladies in there, like I don't know what they're doing. They weren't cleaning, but maybe they were like folding napkins or something.
Setting something up or something.
Something up in there, and was it Darren or was it Brian that went in there? I think it was.
I can't remember. I think
one of them.
Darren, actually.
I think it was Darren went in there. Was like, "Is it all right if we come in and have a little look around?" Because this was in a Bond film, and they were like, "Yeah, come in." And then we were all trying to line up the shots and all that kind of stuff. But it's funny, isn't it, when you've been to a location, because obviously this is meant to be Hamburg, Atlantic Hotel, but then when you actually go to Stoke Poges and that room looks more or less the same, just with less furniture in and stuff and no bed, obviously.
Yeah, not a big bed. Yeah.
No, and it's funny to like when you look at the film now to be like, outside is like because you go out that fucking door. Like right behind where Pierce would be sitting. You go out that door, walk around the corner a bit, and you're at the 18th hole from Goldfinger. It's like right there,
crazy,
isn't it?
Yeah, it is crazy. But as I was watching it this time round, I was lining up with how I remembered the room exactly. You know, when Paris comes in the door, it's the one at the end on the right and all that. And I was lining it all up in my head. But it was great to see that. But just quickly going back, before Paris turns up, there's that little scene with Paris and Carver, which I mentioned a bit on last week's podcast, where basically Carver gives a bit of his own backstory to Paris. So which is kind of strange because you think having married her, they probably would have gone through that sort of stuff already. But I guess maybe
do you know what?
She's a bit of a trophy wife, isn't she?
She's definitely a trophy wife. And two, I feel like he's gonna, that sort of person, he's gonna be very guarded. I'm sure he's got a billion secrets, some of which he keeps in his little safe in his little rooftop lab.
This is it,
from the missus, for sure.
So this is the part where basically he sort of said that he grew up, worked for this newspaper. It was a rag, but the owner sort of taught him sort of one main thing: the key to a great story is not who or what or when, but why. And basically he wanted to know why Bond got involved, and so that is why, rather than sending a henchman, he knew that Paris and Bond had a past, that he sent her instead. So we get Bond looking suave, looking smouldering. Paris rocks up, and so this is the part where we chatted a bit last week about it, where obviously they sort of reminisce a little bit, don't they? They go back to their sort of history, and they talk about why things fell through or whatever, and we get this line: "Did I get too close for comfort?" And Bond takes a while to answer, but he knows what his answer is going to be, but he takes a while, and you can see he does it sincerely and heartfelt. He's like, yes. So, but you're not sure about this, are you? And to be honest, not. I'm not either. Now, I think, just quickly, if Vesper had survived Casino, turned up in Spectre, and sort of said the same thing: "Did I get too close for comfort?" And Danny Boy said yes. I would have believed that.
Yes, 100%.
Same with Tracy. Yep. If Tracy had survived and George had carried on with another couple of films and said the same thing. It's just with this, I know it's hard because you haven't seen it before, but it's hard to believe as well, I think.
Yeah, I tell you what I equate this to. So I often refer to this scene because I love it so much, and he got it so right, is the very end of the book Solo by William Boyd. Bond is, obviously he's a slightly older Bond in that story, but he's been seeing this woman, and then at the end of the story, spoiler alert if you haven't read it yet, go and read it because it's brilliant. End of the book, he's sort of like in two minds, like he's going to shack up with this bird, and then he hears the crunch of footsteps on gravel outside, and it's heavily implied that the villain has come back and is scoping him out. And so he goes out into the garden and he like scopes it around, nobody's there, and then the gate at the end of the garden's open or something, and he runs down there and he can just hear somebody like escaping, and he comes to the decision that he just can't live that life, that normal life. He can't be with somebody because it's always going to put them in danger. So she's literally in bed waiting for him upstairs to come back in. And he just gets in his car and drives off into the night. Kind of like the Incredible Hulk used to in the old Incredible Hulk TV series, where he'd just walk off into the distance by himself. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I thought that's such a brilliant way to end that book, because that encapsulates Bond's character, because he can't ever settle down because it's just not part of him. And of course, that's a very valid reason as well, because they're always going to end up dead if he does. Now, I feel like for this interaction with Paris to have that power, she needed to be somebody he was gonna settle down with. It was gonna be a ring on the finger moment, and then at the last moment he came to a decision like that of like, I can't do this because, and then disappears, right? And I just don't feel like there's any of that weight to their relationship. And of course it's tricky because we don't see any of it, we just see the aftermath of it. I can't see it being Paris Carver. I just don't. It just doesn't feel like she'd be the sort of person he would reach that point in a relationship with.
Well, what if they flipped it? So in the film, basically, they had a past. She said, "Did she get too close for comfort?" And Bond said, "Yes." So obviously he left. He said, "I'll be right back," and he didn't turn up. But if they flipped that, so they went with your idea that you just had, that basically she was the one who basically he left because he wanted to protect her rather than anything else. Would that have worked or not? Or do you just think they just needed potentially different better chemistry, different actors?
Yeah, I don't think the character of Paris Carver would ever be the sort of woman that Bond would get to a point where he'd be settling down with her, or not even settling down, but having a long-term thing with.
Do you know what it is? I don't think you get to see many of her strengths. Like if you think of Tracy, you think of Vesper, obviously loads more screen time, but you get to see, them, their character traits and their positives and their negatives. Obviously Paris, we don't have much screen time with her, but there has to be something in the woman, a bit of danger and a bit of independence and a bit of strength of character for Bond to have any remote attraction in someone. It has to have at least those things. Yeah. And it's very difficult to see some of those within the character of Paris.
Yeah, I feel like I think the thing that's missing is, I think we as the audience needed to have known that character a bit beforehand. You know what I mean? Because obviously they do set it up with the conversation with them in the car, and you can see he's a bit sensitive about it. But I don't know. I just don't see her as being his type for a long-term thing. Like you're absolutely right when you say if it was a Vespa or a Tracy, but then we know that history. We know those characters, whereas this is a brand new thing. So it's a tricky one. But it falls a little bit flat. That like it's an interesting idea, but I just don't think that there's that sort of energy between them. Do you know what I mean?
No,
like I don't feel like
tricky.
there's that much of a history.
Yeah.
It
is. No, it's a tricky one to pull off. But
maybe
so
do you know what? Think about it. Maybe they could have had it because the only bit of history we hear about is I always wondered how I'd feel if I ever saw you again. Slap across the face. How about the words "I'll be right back"? That's the only bit of history we know. If there was maybe just a few extra lines in there about actually what happened between the two of them, like we were dating for 2 years or something, and I thought you were going to put a ring on my finger, blah blah blah. Then you know what I mean? Maybe I still don't think she would be the character. It's
a balance between exposition and pace, isn't it?
Yeah,
and it's a fine line to tread sometimes.
Yeah, I don't know. The too close for comfort. Yes, I feel uncomfortable.
But it'd be interesting to see if a different actress would give you and I a different perspective on it.
True. Yeah.
Maybe it is.
I tell you one thing I am very grateful to Paris Carver for is that wonderful rear shot with the wonderful lingerie on. I was very pleased with that as a 15-year-old boy, and I continue to be pleased with it as a 36-year-old man, Chris.
I certainly was as well. It was a good one. Thank you to that, Paris. So I think there's a quite nice little bit. So while that's going on, Bond obviously getting bitey again, we cut back to Gupta and Carver. And basically, Gupta informs Carver that Bond is a government agent. He's Gupta's law of creative anomalies. If it sounds too good to be true, it always is. And he basically, crossed every T, dotted every I. So he must be a government agent. And then Carver says, "Do you think my wife knew it?" And then this is a part that I really like. So he basically says, "There's a lot of ambient noise, but if you dial down." A lot of noise or whatever, but if you dial down the ambulance, he plays that line, "Tell me, James, do you still sleep with a gun under your pillow?" And Carver's face when he sees it is great because, as a villain, some people aren't too keen on Elliot Carver, and he does get a bit wacky sometimes, with a little bit later on and stuff like that, and he is a bit comical, but I really like his response to hearing that line. You know what? And then,
there's that white hot rage in his eyes, isn't there? Like you can see. And do you know what? I wish we'd have seen a bit more of that. Like you kind of do a bit later, like with the whole. Do you remember? Like there's the dude with on the stealth ship later where he's asleep, not looking at the screens or whatever, and he like, "What the hell do I pay you for?" and all that kind of stuff. Yeah. And there's actually a deleted scene of that where that goes further, and he really it's a bit darker, and he gets Stamper to kill him there and then.
See, that's what's needed for Stamper as well. I know we'll come to that later, but we needed more of that as well. But we'll come to that later.
We will indeed. Yeah, absolutely. But you're absolutely right. I like that feeling of rage. I would like to have seen him really flip out once or twice through the movie.
Because he had that sort of style to him where he had a lot of energy going for him, and I think he definitely had the opportunity to like snap and go crazy, and not like in a Dominic Green way with the axe, but just to show the rage. And we got that nice simmering moment there. But I think we definitely need. I like maybe just to see him do the killing for once. Obviously, Stamper does a bit, but maybe see him do something really, really nasty, whatever it is. And it didn't quite. Yeah, it didn't quite happen. But I like that. And there's a bit afterwards where he sees it once or he hears it once, tells Gupta, right, I think we should make an appointment for the doctor with my wife, or for my wife with the doctor. Yeah. Then Gupta goes to obviously speak to Kaufman or whatever, and Carver plays it again, not once but twice. And I think that hits home as well. So I really do like that bit. Yeah. But I think we could have had a bit more of that in the film, definitely. So basically then we go back to Paris and Bond. They've had their little bit of fun, and Paris tells Bond about the secret lab that Carver's got, which he could gain access through the roof. And Bond's like, "Oh, you don't have to tell me." And then Paris has that line, "Oh, this job of yours, it's hell on relationships or whatever it is. It's murder on relationships or whatever it is."
Indeed.
And then and then she leaves, and then we get to Bond breaking into the lab. Now, what do you think of this scene?
I like this bit, right? Because it's got Sneaky Bond, and B,
Definitely.
it's got some Sneaky Bond music to go along with
Good
it, which
music,
I very much like. So you see him sort of coming through the roof, sneaks down those stairs, and you know that bit where he kind of like there's that sort of electronic trapdoor thing on the roof that kind of flips up, and he goes down the stairs, and then he pauses, gets the PPK out, and then presses the button to bring it back down. I always feel like it's going to hit him on the head if he's not. He just misses his head. Yeah, it's like a half an inch.
He knew exactly where he was.
Yeah,
that's how cool he is.
No, I really do like that. And there's some classic Sneaky Bond going on, and you hear Gupta talking about the satellite, don't you? With what,
you break it, you bought it,
like $300 billion or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And then they bugger off. We get some good old mobile phone hacking action, don't we? Which is nice for 1997 for sure. And we see a little bit of Sneaky Bond safe cracking, kind of searching through desks, a little bit reminiscent of Majesty's in Switzerland over there with the safe cracking. No Playboy magazine this time though, but we do see some rather questionable sort of German looking magazines in the days when magazines were still a thing. I mean, that's
crazy,
isn't it?
And you think Gupta, with all of his technological knowledge, he would have loved it in the internet.
Those were the days though where you would have to wait for half an hour for one picture, wouldn't you? Do you remember?
So I think, one pixel sometimes. What I think that's what the magazines do, is just to warm them up while the pictures are being downloaded.
The pictures are loaded, absolutely. Those were the bloody days. The young'uns won't even understand that of what it used to be around 97. It was dial-up internet, so it was you'd plug it into the wall, like in the same
make
socket.
that weird
phone,
noise as well,
and it'd be like when you'd connect, and then it was so painfully slow. And it was, I remember to this day, my first ever search engine search, which wasn't Google in those days. It was something like Alta Vista or something. Do you remember that website?
Yeah.
My very first Google search was Pamela Anderson naked. I can still remember it to this day. And I remember sitting there for a good probably 10 minutes waiting for that one photograph to download. But it was worth it. Yeah. You know, as a 14-year-old boy or whatever I was at the time, it was definitely worth it. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Nice. God bless you.
Those were the days.
All right. So where did we get to? Yeah. So Bond, he uses the 20,000 volt thing on his phone to break into Gupta's office, and then he uses that fingerprint scanner on the phone to break into the safe. We see Gupta's into a bit of drugs as well. There's a syringe and the bag of pow and stuff like that. But more importantly, there's a GPS encoder, which Bond obviously takes.
Yes.
And he's just about to leave, go back the way he came, when he hears something being drilled. Now, he could have easily got out the roof and probably escaped.
Yeah.
But he was intrigued, wasn't he?
He was.
So he goes along to see what happens. Suddenly the door opens, sees Wei-Lin, and then the alarm goes off, and then all hell breaks loose. Now, this bit's quite an interesting part, I thought.
Yeah, this is like... I do like the soundtrack to this, right? This is like a moment where it's like, okay, let's do something new with the Bond score. You know, it's a very electronic-y kind of piece, but it's a solid one. I like it. And it's obviously we've got Wei-Lin coming in her sort of leathery outfit, and this is where
type thing.
this is where it goes a bit Marvel for me with Wei-Lin there. She does the thing in a bit where she's walking down the walls and stuff,
which is quite cool as a sort of stunt and as a visual. I think it's I really like it, and she has the cheeky wave to Bond and stuff like that.
That was nice, and even in the way she moves, like when she opens the door, she's in that sort of like half crouch that all the superheroes do. You know, when they do that half crouch and they've got like one hand on the floor, she's she's doing that kind of thing. And
speaking of which, very briefly, did you notice Bond when he's climbing down that hatchway in the roof, and he sort of jumps off the bottom 3 steps into a crouch?
Yes,
and he does one of those crouches. It's really
does.
Funny, actually.
Absolutely. I did notice that. Yeah. So nice little action sequence. It's good to see. What I like to see is baddies like faceless henchmen, machine guns. Bond firing back with the PPK, because you don't get to see the PPK in full-on action a lot these days, do you? No. And it's nice that it's a full-on action sequence. He's not running around with an AK. It's the PPK, which I really enjoy.
Yeah, and what I also like is sort of faceless henchmen who actually put up a little bit of a fight, and we get a bit of that here, so it's quite good. So obviously Wei Lin makes her escape. Bond gets chased. He ends up sort of over this printing press type thing, and first this security guard basically runs over and grabs him, and they have a bit of a tussle on top of this printing press, and it gets to that point where Bond's being strangled, so he punches him once and the guy laughs, punches him twice and the guy's still laughing, so Bond like really sort of winds his arm up as almost a bit like a comical what do you call him? Popeye moment where he sort of winds his arm up and then sucks him a third time, and then the guard is knocked out or whatever. But then you get the second guard who's a bit like an animal, so he sort of jumps in and he sort of charges at Bond and goes rah, and then and sort of charges into him, and they have a bit of fisticuffs. But then Bond punches him, and then we get a real classic Bond moment, which also harks back to Old Majesties, where he punches the guy over the railing, lands in the sort of the printer press, and then we get that nice bit of red. We like a bit of red.
We do. They'll print anything these days like that. Very nice.
That's a lovely line.
Yeah.
Lovely line.
Now I tell you what I like immediately after that is Bond's just strolling along, looking rad, which must be said, looking rad. And what do we have? We have Bond walking music, down. He's just walking along. Bullet comes in, shatters the glass, little blast of action. The one bit I don't like in this sequence is when he jumps on that little trolley.
Okay, tell me about it.
So it goes on a little bit too long. Yeah, it just does. You know what I mean?
Think how vulnerable he'd be on that thing as well, isn't it?
You would definitely get a bullet or two up the.
I tell you what would be better.
Go on.
If the trolley, if it was possible, and it would be, is if he ran, dived, but turned halfway in the air, so he landed on his back, but still had the same speed. So he was firing back as he was going along.
I would have preferred that. You've nailed it there, Chris. I would definitely have preferred that. But so it goes on a bit too long, that roll, and he's not being proactive, is he? He's just like at the mercy of the trolley, really. Exactly, at the mercy of the trolley. But then I do kind of like that last bit when the door is coming down and Indiana Jones it, like the way he just kind of rolls through. That's a cool little roll.
Really hardcore roll, isn't it? It's like and like flaps. I love that bit. That's something that I'd love to do actually.
Now tell me this: there's that brief bit when he's kind of running away after the rolly trolley, when he's in that room with the big rolls of paper. The big sort of things.
And one of the
like the forklift
trucks sort of almost bumps him.
That's it. They had that originally was a much lengthier action sequence where they were running in and out of those rolls of paper.
Okay.
And it was going to be a very complex action sequence, apparently, according to Spotter's Wood. And then in the end, they just didn't have time, so they cut it. And then he was like, to be honest, it wasn't needed on the end of that sequence anyway for pacing. But what do you think about that?
Well, do you know what's interesting? Those rolls of paper remind me very much of the heroin containers in the warehouse in Fiore's Only.
Don't they? That's a good call.
Yeah. Same size, sort of, same shape and everything like that. So that's interesting. But I think with all these what ifs, I still like to see them, even if obviously it was cut from the script. But if it was shot, anything that was shot, even if it doesn't make it, I'd like to see it. But I guess in terms of pacing, they probably made the right decision because they've had all the bit on the roof. They've had the gunfight and stuff like that, and a bit of a chase. The trolley thing, I think if he had flipped onto his back and fired, definitely would have been better. So I suppose they are extending it a bit more.
Do you know what that if he flipped onto his back, almost like the GoldenEye pre-title sequence when he gets on the conveyor belt.
Yeah, exactly.
That's what we needed. That's what we needed from there.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, totally agree with you. And then the bit under but I do like that roll underneath the dropping down door.
It's a good roll.
Brilliant. Yeah, definitely.
Good stuff.
Yes.
So what's up next?
Okay, so then Bond, he's basically in his he gets to his BMW, he's driving off, and he receives a phone call from his good mate Elliot, who strangely has Bond's number. But then if you think about it, he's like, a media mogul, so surely he could get Bond's number somehow. But anyway, so he gets Bond's number, he calls him, and he says that Bond has two things belonging to him. One is the little red box in the car, which is obviously the GPS encoder. The other, he tells Bond, is his wife in Bond's hotel room, which Bond is like, well, hang on a minute. Obviously, he didn't know about that. So he knows something's wrong. So Bond basically heads back to his hotel room.
Now, before we get to the hotel room, have you noticed the little, if you're eagle-eyed, right, you'll see, obviously, Bond's shot from the passenger seat, got his phone on, talking to Carver.
Yeah.
And I remember reading about this at the time and spotting it at the time as well. Do you remember Pierce got injured a little bit in the making of this, and he had a cut on his face just there on his face. Yeah. And as he's holding, basically the reason they had shot it like that is so he could hold the phone up like that and you wouldn't see it. But if you're very eagle-eyed, you can just see the little mark between his fingers as the car like moves a little bit. His hand kind of moves, and you can just about see it. You've got to be eagle-eyed. That's
interesting.
So look out for that next time you watch it.
Do you know what caused the accident? Was it? Did he slice it on something?
It was. I think it was. It was. I believe it was on the stealth ship. They'd already filmed a sequence on the stealth ship, and he twatted his face on something. I don't know what it was exactly. Yeah. But yeah.
Okay. Oh, interesting. I didn't notice that. I'll have to check that out next time. So basically, Bond heads back towards his hotel, and I like that. I like Stamper being on the roof. I don't know what it is, but it's just I just like it. Stamper's obviously keeping an eye out. He sees Bond turn up.
Let me ask you about Stamper, right? Because if we rewind to the Great British Bond Boxing Day Bonanza quiz from Christmas 2018.
Yeah.
The ratings at the end of the quiz for the lowest scorer was Stamper or the log cabin girl from The Spy Who Loved Me. Now that tells me you don't rate Stamper very highly. Now talk to me about that.
I think I was probably being a bit harsh on him. I just would have loved if he'd made more use of those chakra torture implements. It was ready for it. Like, it was right for it. Obviously, we'll go into that later on. But I think he needed that something. And the fact that, Bond was the one that used it in the scene. And he was meant to initially have that thing where his pleasure and pain were meant to be genetically reversed within him. But that kind of got rehashed and used a bit in The World Is Not Enough with Renard. Yeah. So it was like, what did he have? And he needed that something, and for me, it didn't quite happen. But they had the perfect thing, but he just didn't use it properly.
Yeah, do you know, he had the David Bowie eyes, didn't he? One brown, one blue eyes.
Yeah, he had the eyes.
But you kind of need a bit more than that. Because there's the other thing with Ricky Jay as well, wasn't it? With the cars.
Yeah, the car. I mean, that would have been brilliant. He would have been great if they made more use of that.
So for anybody that doesn't know, he died recently, didn't he, Ricky Jay?
Yeah, he did. Yeah.
He was like a Vegas magician and was super skilled with like flinging playing cards. So he'd like throw it and it would like go into a melon and stick into a melon and things like that. And that was originally going to be part of his character. And you can see on the deleted scenes that early in the film when he's in his computer room, you see him just practicing and flinging cards around. And then there was going to be a scene later when they're in Carver's media center before they jump off the roof with the banner, where as Bond's escaping, he was going to be flinging his cards at Bond and stuff. Yeah. But when I see it on the screen, as much as I like that idea, with what they had in store for him, it felt like a little bit too little. I feel like if you're going to do a character like that, it needs to be more of a feature. It did feel, I imagined it in the film, and it was literally just that 2 moments at the beginning, flinging the cards, and then later and there wasn't as kind of cool as that idea was. I think it was like an underdeveloped idea.
What about if when he's doing all his techno stuff on the keyboard, he literally uses one hand, and the other hand he's always like shuffling cards with one hand, a bit like
is it too Boris
is doing the poker chips? Or Boris with the pen, maybe. Yeah, because he only uses one hand. Yeah, maybe it is. But either way, the fact that he's like a minor character, I think giving him something might have worked, might not. But either way, Stamper needed something.
Stamper definitely. I feel the thing about Stamper, bless his heart, is he's quite visually striking, isn't he? He looks.
Yeah, he's tall. He's blonde. He's obviously got the right features, the right look and stuff.
But I feel like he's a bit of a generic movie villain. I feel like you could bring Stamper and stick him in Die Hard 5 or something, and he would you know what I mean?
Do you know how he got his call? Gotts Otto, who plays Stamper. Right, so in rehearsals, basically all they had was, I think it was 20 seconds or 30 seconds, but let's, for argument's sake, say 20 seconds to try and impress them. And he walked in and goes, I'm big, I'm blonde, I'm German, that's 5 seconds, keep the rest. And then walked out again. and then he got the role. So I think that's pretty cool.
That is cool.
Yeah.
I like that. Good old Gots. Yeah. You're right, though. He did need that sort of, that torture scene moment. Do you know what I mean? Which is, it's just funny because I know, again, I'm skipping ahead a little bit, but I feel like when they get captured at Carver's tower later on, that was a prime torture scene moment. You know what I mean? Yeah. But hey ho.
Anyway.
Cool. But
So,
I tell you what we do get is obviously when he goes into the hotel room, we find Bond in there. And then there's Paris dead on the bed. And we hear that news report that's obviously says, she was
Which is
found.
really good. I really like this whole idea.
That. Now, I tell you what else I like about that. So he's there, he's giving her a little kiss and a cuddle or whatever. He's a bit gutted. And then there's that thing you become aware of when they say the body of another man with a self-inflicted gunshot wound. And
suddenly
his senses prick up, and then that's where Kaufman enters. But what I do like is after this scene, obviously... Kaufman was shot with a somewhat self-inflicted gunshot wound, so that news report still applies, which I thought was a nice little touch. And I think that's
beautiful. We need more of those sort of things, like just when things work really well, and that's it. That's a clear example.
What I like about
subtle
that is
but brilliant.
Obviously, that unidentified man was supposed to be Bond, but he turns it around and hoists him by his own petard, which we do like a bit of petard hoisting, don't we?
So what are your thoughts on Dr. Kaufman?
I love him.
I think he's brilliant.
Yeah, I really do.
Because I've heard some people that aren't fans, and I'm like, I think he's great.
Well, I think I tell you what, I do like when you look at this film. Like I watched this one with the missus, and it must be said she wasn't that complimentary. She wasn't that happy with Tomorrow Never Dies.
In which particular aspect?
Most of it, if I'm honest.
Oh, okay.
She was. I could tell by about an hour in.
Yeah,
she was checking the phone and stuff and blah blah blah.
Oh, okay,
and so I was like, "Are you not? What are you getting a bit distracted there?" And she's like, "Yeah, I'm not really into this one." And so on.
But she loved Goldeneye, didn't she?
She did like Goldeneye, yeah.
Yeah.
Not a big fan of Pierce. It must be said. She thinks he's very handsome, but not a big fan.
Yeah.
But her comment was that the characters seem very cartoony. She said, like Carver is like an over the top cartoon. Kaufman very much so as well.
Yeah.
And I
Stamper as well. And
I do get that. You know what I mean? They are very exaggerated characters. They are kind of somewhat comic booky. And Kaufman is a huge comic relief in there, and I do love that dude as well. Do you remember he was in Ghost as well, that guy?
Yeah, Vincent Schiavelli.
Yeah. I like every time I've seen him in things, he always I like him. There's just something about him that he does a good job.
Yeah, that look as well is brilliant.
Yeah, very, very striking look. But yeah, I do like the whole thing. I like that because I tell you what I found with this film, right? You know how we talked about Goldeneye and how the dialogue was really crackling and really sparkling dialogue, and it's just amazing. I gave him the limp. The Next Girl, all that shit, man, it's so fucking good. Oh, and I feel like this one isn't quite as strong. Right, I don't feel like there's enough zippy one-liners in the same way that Goldeneye has. Not so much even the one-liners, just the back and forth. You know what I mean?
That's when it works better.
Exactly. And I feel like this one doesn't have quite as much of that. But so you need a little bit of a comic lift for Pierce's Bond, and I do love Kaufman. I think he's a great kind of, because again, you do need those. There's a balance, isn't there? Because you can be too generic. Like there's somebody like a Dominic Green who does, obviously he's a main villain, but there's nothing particularly memorable about Dominic Green. He does a decent job, but it's not like, you remember Le Chiffre with the tears of blood. You remember Oddjob because he's got his hat. You remember Jaws because of the teeth. And I think and as sort of generic as Stamper comes across, he doesn't really have that thing either. But Kaufman kind of does. I think he's, as a minor character as he is, I remember him, you know what I mean? Because that's a strong thing, because he was the one that teaches Stamper about the chakra torches and stuff. And I think he's got some wicked one-liners as well. Like, I could shoot you from Stuttgart and still create the proper effect. I love that, man. I think it's brilliant.
No. It is merely a hobby.
Yeah.
But I'm very gifted. It's so good, isn't
he's
it?
wicked, man. I do like Kaufman.
Yeah, I love him. But while this is going on, so while obviously Kaufman and Bond Kaufman's got his gun trained on Bond, I like the fact that Carver's goons are basically trying to break into Bond's car, so they get electrocuted, then they get the sledgehammers and the crowbars, and that doesn't have an effect. They try shooting it, and they basically tell Stamper they can't get into the car. So just as Kaufman is about to shoot Bond, he gets that thing, stop yelling in my ear, yeah? And then obviously he finds out they can't get in. He's like, well, call the auto club. Do you want to call the auto club? And so basically he apologizes to Bond. He's like, I'm so sorry. I feel like an idiot. I don't know what to say. And then basically asks Bond. And then Bond does a clever thing here. Very similar to From Russia with Love, with how he gets Red Grant to open the briefcase.
That's true.
He does the same thing here with how he forcibly goes for his phone, knowing that Kaufman will say, no, I'll open it. I'll take the phone. So that's a really good thing that Bond does well. And then obviously recall 3, send, and then and then there's a brilliant bit where he gets the gun and he turns it on Kaufman, and there's a last minute sort of trying to get out of it. Kaufman says to him, he's just a professional doing his job. And then we get a lovely bit from Brosnan. And what does he say, Tommy?
Me too. There it is.
And that's great, isn't it? And then that whole new story ties up and everything like that. Fantastic.
Do you know what, though? That is one of those moments in Pierce's run where I'm like, oh, as light as those movies are, especially the next two, this one and the following one, there are those really dark moments. It's kind of like Roger kicking the car off the top in A Few Eyes Only. Like those moments where it's like cold-blooded, unarmed.
Electric King
obviously,
style.
Electric King, she was completely unarmed, but this is like a defenseless dude in a sense. Just bang. He's looking him in the eyes as he pulls the trigger. Do you know what I mean? It's like, oh,
it's good. It's
man,
nice,
that is dark. You
need it.
And I do love that. That's it, because you do. I think that's where obviously Die Another Day goes wrong. Obviously, is that it's way too comic booky, way too over the top, and it doesn't retain that sense of Bond underneath it, the character of Bond. Whereas with this, as lighthearted and quippy as he is in this, and as comic booky as the villains are and some of the characters are, you still have that cold-blooded killer underneath there, which I think is a lovely touch.
It's definitely needed, without a doubt. And that scene I think is great. So basically then Bond sort of steps outside of his hotel room, Stamper's on the roof opposite and sees him. And he knows straight away, obviously it's not gone according to plan and something's wrong with Kaufman. And Bond basically gets the stairway down to the car park. Now, this is the part where the guys are all around his car, and he turns it on with his phone, drives it past him and dives in through the window. Great little bit. And now, what's your thoughts on this whole sort of car park action sequence? Because it's quite a belter, I think.
Well, I tell you what, I think the car chase itself is a classic one. I feel like that is that's a movie poster moment. Everyone remembers that.
Montage.
That will stand the test of time. Ethan Hunt obviously liked it for Mission Impossible Fallout. Didn't do that quite as well as Bond, must be said. No. So there's that. I do. The only disappointing thing about it is how boring the car itself is. Like it is such a sort of
it's a
family saloon that it's like, you needed something a bit spunkier than that, just visually, I love the sequence. I think it's great. I think the concept of having Bond in the back seat driving his car remotely is like, how do you make a car chase in a car park like that exciting? And that's the way you do it, Again, it's obviously heightened reality. Rocket launchers going off everywhere. Machine guns. I love
the fact that his window gets shot and then the rear screen gets shot. So they've got that part where the guy lines up the bazooka and the missile, and Bond just ducks as a missile flies through the car.
Nice
I think that bit is brilliant. That's
absolutely.
So good. There's a lot of nice gadgets used in this.
Do you know? Do you want a funny little trivia fact about this?
Yeah, go for it.
So that was obviously filmed in Brent Cross Shopping Centre car park in London. Level 4. And that's the funny thing is, they don't ever actually change floors. They just change the numbers on the wall. It was shot on that same floor of the car park. So every time he goes up the ramp and round, they just redress the set with the number 4 and number 5 or whatever on the wall. And it's just still the same one. So look out for that next time. You'll find that amazing.
Definitely. But I like the part. So there's a part, obviously the cars are chasing him, shooting him. We've got guys, sort of machine guns in the way. And it gets to the point where he drops those sort of caltrops in the road, and the car behind him obviously land on it and all the tyres burst. And there's a point where he gets to sort of a clear road, a clear path where he's about to drive, and then a sort of security door comes down. So he fires the missiles out the sunroof, and it barely touches the security door. And you think to yourself, how thick are these security doors? Are they like Stromberg's, armor-plated protection sort of thing? It's really strange. But anyway, so it means that he has to go back round. He drives over the caltrops himself, and then I like that button where he just reflates him with a cheeky smile, doesn't he? That's quite cool. I like that. And then they try and trap him with the old that cable, the wire across the path. And then this was quite a convenient one, I must say. The old cutter underneath the BMW.
It knew the exact level that the cable was at, didn't it? It was that was good. Yeah, that was good. Bit pre-planned, but that was a good one. And there was quite a few other ones which were pretty cool. But then they get to the point where Bond he collects that GPS encoder from the glove box, dives out of the car. I like that roll out the car, actually. That's a really good roll. And obviously the pursuers don't see him. He drives the car up by remote onto the roof, and they follow him. And this is a really nice payoff. I like this. So you see the BMW fly off the roof of the car park, landing in the shop window of an Avis rental, which hopefully Q wasn't in at the time. A little bit reckless, wasn't it? Because how did he know nobody was going to be killed? It is a little bit reckless upon that, but it works, doesn't it?
It works, and then the sort of baddie's car sort of ends up stopping, just teetering on the edge as well, which I thought was quite cool. I guess the only thing you would say about the BMW is that if he's a banker as his cover, then that car kind of suits his cover, doesn't it?
I guess it does, yeah. Sort of boring and sort of corporate posh car, and that's
exactly.
it. Yeah.
So I guess from that side of things, you could say I get it works within the story, I suppose.
That's true.
I think that's a great story. And one thing we haven't mentioned,
go on.
We mentioned obviously White Knight being an amazing music cue at the start in the pre-titles. How effing good is Backseat Driver as a music cue?
Yes,
it is one of my favourites. It is so good.
It is a belter, 100%. Yeah. But solid action sequence. I would say my nearest comparison with that BMW in its capabilities, it's almost a Batmobile, isn't it?
Yeah. Actually, very similar, I suppose. Yeah. Well, it depends on which Batmobile, but yeah. No, it's got all that. So after that, then we get to the point now. This is potentially a contentious point. So Bond basically goes to see Jack Wade. He's on the US Air Force Base in South China Sea. Plus point straight away, we see Bond in a naval commander uniform. Mate. How good does Brosnan look?
He really rocks that. He really does. Yeah.
Like he could wear that every day of the week, and he just look amazing. So, what are your thoughts on Jack Wade coming back? Like, because he is a bit of a buffoon, and like in a way. But his character, is he become even more so, like even more of a buffoon than he was in Goldeneye? And does that then compare to Sheriff J.W., who came back in Man with the Golden Gun and was even more so that way? Do you think,
yes.
Are you happy to see Jack Wade, or is it a bit too much, or what are your thoughts?
He even dresses a bit like J.W. Pepper this time around, doesn't he?
He does.
It's a funny one. I do wish they'd have, like, I'd be happy for Jodon to stay in the role. I wish they'd have made him Felix.
I see. That might have
because he could have made a solid Felix Leiter. I think he'd been more in the C-cylinder mold of Felix. But he is a bit buffoonery, and I suppose it's sort of, he's the like sort of comic sort of relief, I guess. I just don't think that's really needed. It would have been nice to see Brosnan's, because the thing with poor old Brosser is that you don't get Fleming material in the Brosnan period. Do you know what I mean? So it would have been nice to have, outside of the core MI6 people, it would have been nice to have a callback to that with a Felix moment. So I don't mind him. He's all right. I mean, I do like that bit where Bond stood there in the naval outfit, and the dude's looking over the encoder, and he just kind of does the same thing he does to Q earlier. He just kind of looks over him, looks him up and down, and kind of shakes his head a little bit.
Yeah,
and
that is a nice moment.
Yeah,
I
do enjoy that. But yeah, he's all right. I just feel like he should have been Felix.
Yeah, I think that could have worked and maybe expanded on then in that case if he had been Felix. But no, that's a good shout, I think. So basically, while Bond is there, obviously they check the encoder and they realise that it's obviously been tampered with. So Bond says, okay, if we give you the position of where the Devonshire said she was, can you work out where she actually sank? And the guy's like, yes. Next up, we see them flying like super high, 5 miles up in the air. Bond and Jack Wade and the gang. So this is where he does his halo jump. So basically, he free falls for 5 miles, which is 26,400 feet, Tom, which is on average about twice the height of a normal parachute jump if you were going to go and do one.
Very nice.
Give or take.
Tell you what, this is something else that Ethan Hunt liked to copy from Bond in the
last
film, didn't he?
He did the old halo, didn't he? He certainly did. I do like the line where the guy's like, okay, so you're free fall for 5 miles. You got to use your oxygen or you'll die of asphyxiation. And old Jack Wade then goes, sounds like my first marriage, which I think is really good. But that's it. Interestingly, so Muffy was his third wife. So now we've heard about his first wife and his third wife, but we didn't hear about his second wife. So
that's a good point. We never hear from Wade again after this film. So I wonder what wife he's on by now.
Yeah, 6, 7 maybe, who knows. But I thought that was quite cool. And then they basically work out that where Bond is jumping is actually Vietnamese waters. And they're like, does he have any US government markings on him? The parachute, the wetsuit, the fins. And it's like, yeah, that's quite cool. I like that.
Now I have to put my fingers up for this, right?
Yes.
If that's where he's jumping and that is where the Devonshire is under the water.
So it's not Chinese territorial waters.
Exactly. So that throws the whole beginning part out, doesn't it? So it should have been the Vietnamese Air Force that were buzzing the Devonshire. So what's going on with that? Do you think somebody just fucked up and didn't think about it, or what?
Well, basically, they did all of that to get the joke that he's wearing US markings and he could be in trouble if the Vietnamese found him. So that is an oversight, clearly. And it's a real shame from that aspect because it's a bit funny about it. About that thing, but I'd prefer that not to be there and for it to make sense and for it to be Chinese waters rather than Vietnamese.
The joke wasn't that good.
So that is a bit of a shame. But the actual jump I thought looked class, particularly when he leaps out of the aeroplane first of all and he's sort of diving through the clouds and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And again, it's not like a dangerous thing. I know he says about people who forget to cut their chutes and drown, but it's not really a dangerous thing because he's just parachuting and all he's going to do is pull his chute. But they do kind of make it a bit exciting with the sound of the air, and obviously he's going at 200 miles an hour or whatever it is.
You must have done a skydive at some point, surely.
Yeah, I've done a few skydives.
Have you done a halo jump?
No.
Is that something that civilians are allowed to do or not?
No, I think you need to have done quite a few jumps, I'd imagine.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Right. That was just my question. That's all. I wanted to know if you'd done a halo jump.
I would, I'd happily give it a go. But yeah. So the actual jump itself is pretty cool, and I do like that shot where he's heading towards the water and obviously pulls his chute, and you just see him drop into the sea. I think that's quite a really cool.
That's
shot.
a nice shot, yeah.
Yeah, I like that. So then basically Bond he dives down to the Devonshire, and he sees where the sea drill's gone, doesn't he? There's that big sort of circular hole. Very similar again to the St. George's with the mine. Similar sort of feel, isn't it? So he swims inside the hole. And again, similar to the St. George's, he finds those sort of dead bodies inside that sort of suddenly startle him.
Do you know what struck me this time, actually? How good is it to see Bond scubaing around again like he used to back in the day? I feel like we need that.
When was the previous one before that? Oh, we had a little bit in License
We
to
did
Kill.
have a bit in License, didn't we? And then I suppose the time before that would have been For Eyes Only.
Yeah,
exactly, and we've not had it since. I know. Have we?
So, Daniel, we want a naval uniform and we want a bit of scuba diving.
Yes, please. And they do go hand in hand, don't they, really? When you think about
exactly.
it.
Why not? Imagine a pre-title scene where we see Bond in a bit of scuba diving, doing a bit sneaky scuba diving, but then when he comes out, he's got a naval uniform on or something like that. Or he turns into a naval uniform. Or maybe the pre-title scene is like the scuba diving type underwater bit, and then the first shot we get after the titles is Bond rocking up to see M in his naval uniform.
That would be very nice. I would enjoy that.
That would be so good.
That would give me the twitches. Now, one thing that I hadn't considered until I watched it last time for this for JBR is that this whole story is supposed to take place over a 2-day period. Because if you remember, when Bond comes in after
48 hours to investigate.
Exactly. I'll give you 48 hours to investigate. And obviously the British fleet are moving into position.
Oh, that's very true.
The whole World War III thing is about to kick off. So Bond has a very narrow window of time. So it's never really mentioned after that. But it must be a 2-day period this whole story happens over.
That's probably, it must be, in which case, probably the quickest Bond story seen on screen.
Yeah.
Because you think GoldenEye was 9 years before, that must be the longest with that 9-year gap, and then they've gone for the shortest, the one after on the storyline. That is interesting.
Yeah, because what made me think it was that obviously he's swimming through and he sees all the bodies, and it's like there's been no sort of decay of those corpses, and I thought, oh yeah, it probably because obviously he's flown to the South China Sea from Europe. That takes the best part of a day, so that it must have sunk like the day before yesterday when he's down there. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. That's I've never thought of that before. That's really cool. I like that. Yeah, nice one. So he makes it into the missile room in the Devonshire, and then and notices one of the cruise missiles has been stolen. And then LYNN turns up, and they have that little sort of grapple underwater until they kind of realise who each other are. But so the whole thing about the Devonshire, it's kind of like on a bit of a precipice or something, isn't it? It's not quite basically level, and it sort of tilts, and because it tilts, the missiles sort of knock into each other, which eventually finish against the door, very much like the archive scene in GoldenEye.
Very much so, actually. An underwater version.
And so it obviously knocks the hatchway door closed, and they can't get out. Now this next bit I'm not sure about. So they're both trapped in this missile room. They find this sort of ventilation tube. So LYNN tries not once but twice to get out and keeps hitting her scuba tank. So they take a deep breath, remove their gear, swim up this tube, and eventually swim up and free dive to the surface, which is cool. It's not bad. But why, if I was in that situation, you could take off your scuba tank, hold it in front of you, and then swim up while you've got your scuba tanks in front of you and still breathe at the same time, and then put it back on when you get out the tube and then go up.
It's not as visually exciting, I suppose, Chris. That's the answer to that. Yeah.
Is it? Oh, okay. All right then. I'll let you off that one. So they get to the surface then, and they see LYNN's sort of boat, and she's like calling her colleague over, and suddenly he gets harpooned, doesn't he? And then falls in the water, and we see Stamper's there, Stamper and the other guys. And basically he tells them to fish Bond and LYNN out of the water. Okay, so next up then, we're in Saigon, or we're on the way to Saigon. Bond, that's why they say Vietnamese waters, so they can fit in Saigon, isn't it? So they can, get there. So Bond and LYNN, they're taken by helicopter to Carver's building. And I like the fact he's got that massive building. Didn't you see it when you were in Thailand?
Yeah, I went there.
It was actually shot in Thailand.
I had dinner on the roof of that building. Yeah,
did
absolutely.
You?
Yes, I did.
Did you really?
Yeah.
Did you jump off and hang on to a banner?
I tried. I just didn't do it as gracefully. Yeah, the banner didn't tear, so I was hanging up there for ages.
I didn't know you were on the roof of it. That's really cool.
No, it was cool. It's basically, it looks like a ship on the top. It's kind of like if you imagine. You get up to the top, and then it's how can I describe it? So like the two ends of the building, it's like a big square skyscraper. Two ends of that are like elevated, and then there's a bit that's lower in the middle. So it's kind of like the two ends of an old school ship.
I see.
And there's tables up there and all that kind of stuff. But it's quite a cool little sort of funky club / restaurant type place. Yeah.
Nice. Oh, that's really smart.
Yeah.
So we obviously see that building. He's got the big sort of banner with his face on it. But the fact is they're now cuffed together, which is a really cool idea, I think. I really like that idea. So they end up they're in this corridor, and they see General Chang walking past, who LYNN recognises, which got me thinking. So in Moonraker, we had Chang, or I guess Bond calls him Cha sometimes, but it's written down as Chang. Obviously in this one, we've got General Chang. And then in Die Another Day, we have Mr. Chang.
Who's Mr. Chang?
He's the one in the hotel who, when Bond, after he goes to get a shave, when he escapes from M and MI6, he goes in the hotel, and that's Mr. Chang, who he knows is working for the Chinese Secret Service or whatever. When what is it? Peaceful Mountains of Desire is giving him a massage. Or something.
Yeah, Peaceful Mountains of Desire.
What is it? Plenty. What is it?
Peaceful Fountains.
Peaceful Mountains. Oh my god.
Nice. Yeah,
it's been a long day.
It's I imagine Chang is a reasonably common name, but maybe they are all the same character. Who knows? Because the timeline in the Bond world is somewhat
different actors, though,
squiffy,
so you never know. But then, that always happens. So basically, they enter sort of his media room and find Carver writing Bond and YLYNN's obituary, which is quite interesting. But I do like that part where he sort of says to them, well, you guys didn't know, but he shows them the headlines about the crisis growing. And we've got the classic, the Empire will strike back. Now, what did you think of that? A nice little Star Wars nod there.
The timing of this is nice because this is smack bang in the time when it was like Phantom Menace fever, wasn't it? I think Phantom Menace came out in 97. So it was kind of like all the juice about Star Wars finally coming back after all this time. So it was a nice little nod. And as well, I think Austin Powers came out in 97.
Yeah, it was 97. Right. Yeah. Well,
so it was a ripe time for movies at that time, or not, as the Phantom Menace turned out in the end, sadly. But it was a nice little nod.
And then we get the line that Carver says, which we mentioned last week: "Words are the new weapons, satellites are new artillery," which is brilliant. I think that's a great sort of pitch that was used by Bruce Furstein there. And there's also a few choice quotes by Carver. Classic. If you're going to quote the villain, like obviously Goldfinger, you know what it would be, and what have you. With this one, we've got the distance between insanity and genius is measured only by success, and I think that's a really good one.
That is a great line, and it is absolutely true as well. Because if you think of anybody who ever achieved anything amazing, it is that. If somebody says all of a sudden, everybody believes that the Earth is flat or whatever, and then you make the discovery that it's in fact not, and the sun goes around the Earth and not the other way around. The sun goes around the Earth. What? The Earth goes around the sun. Sorry, I'm a few hundred years behind the rest of the world, and all that kind of stuff. Everyone thinks you're mad for a while until they realise that, oh yeah, shit, you're absolutely right, and then there it is. So that's a belter of a line, actually.
Yeah,
that really
absolutely, definitely is. And then Carver basically talks to Stamper and mentions about him being trained by Dr. Kaufman, who in the art of chakra torture. And I like it. So you've got that box. He opens the box, all the different implements inside, and the energy centers like the heart or genitals. So you've got one that crushes your balls. You've got one that you stab into your heart. I know you just winced then. I felt as well. One that stabs into your heart, one into your stomach. All these sort of things that will attack your different sort of things. And it could have so been used. So although I like to see it, I am really, really gutted in this that it's not used properly.
That was ripe for a tear-inducing, eyeball-scratching torture scene. Because that is the reason I could never be a spy, Chris. Is because they'd only have to look at my knob and bollocks and get a tool out like that, and I would tell them whatever they wanted to know. There would be no secret keeping. They would have the password to the Swiss bank account. They would have whatever they needed. So that's that. I mean, there was ample room for that there, and I don't know why they didn't go that way.
And especially when it was a bit weak, how Bond and YLYNN just basically kicked one guard, shot a couple of others, and then suddenly they got away.
Well, this is it. Yeah,
it's way too easy for me.
My complaint about this film is how it is a bit Rambo. Bond isn't supposed to be Rambo. Obviously, there are moments when there's all-out battle going on and stuff, and machine guns and all the rest of it. But Bond should be somebody that uses his wits more than all-out machine gunning, especially when you got a machine gun in each hand or whatever running around. And it is a bit weak because they are chained up, they are handcuffed together, and he just sort of like hits the dude next to him, steals his gun, and it's just it is a bit weak. You're absolutely right.
But imagine if before that they had them both in like a back-to-back chair, still handcuffed, but and then they had two torture devices, and maybe Stamp had one in either hand, and one was trying to torture Bond while the other was trying to torture YLYNN, and that would be awesome. I guess perhaps it'd be too dark for this type of film. I don't know, but
maybe.
But as a scene, I think that would be great. And then obviously somehow they get out or whatever. I think it just missed that for me, because I do like the part that Bond basically grabs one of them and flings it into Stamper's thigh, so it is used, and Stamper sort of grabs it and looks at him. So I do like that.
And you know what? That was the moment.
Before.
That was the moment when old Gupta was going to start flinging his playing cards.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Oh, was it really?
Yeah.
Okay, there. So yeah, I think it just needed something else. But so they go a bit Terminator, shoot the glass, then they jump down onto the roof and hide behind that sort of whatever it is, little box, and they realise the banner's there. So he gets the old cleat or whatever it is and hacks off the rope. So they're holding on. Now this part is pretty cool, isn't it? So they do that massive leap and then fly down the building as the banner's tearing, and like you got this suspenseful music. You're like, oh god, when it gets to the bottom, what's going to happen? Is it going to tear? Are they going to fall? And they're going down pretty fast and like whoa and that sort of stuff.
I do have a complaint.
Yes, let's do it. Let's hear it.
I have a complaint about this scene. Number one, I don't like it when they hang off the bottom and then Bond says, next time I'll take the elevator.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you why I'm
wouldn't
unhappy.
say, I know exactly.
He would not say elevator. And this is a lot of people say that Tomorrow Never Dies is the Americanization of Bond.
Yeah.
And I see that, you know, in the style of the filmmaking.
Yeah.
It doesn't, there's something about the colors used in a Bond film. Like if you look at The Living Daylights and you look at GoldenEye, the colors that you see on screen feel like Bond.
Every Bond film is meant to have a color scheme, doesn't they? Like obviously gold in Goldfinger, red in Live and Let Die, purple in Majesties, blue I think in Thunderball. There's like isn't it that every film has a sort of a color sort of
I guess so.
It's meant to,
but
in a way anyway.
Yeah,
maybe
no,
I'm
not talking about it in it as a sort of stylized thing like that. I just think there's something about the visuals that look different in this film. This looks like a Die Hard with a Vengeance or something like that, or even an Arnie movie or two. It doesn't have that same look, and I don't know whether it's just the colors are different. Like if you close your eyes and imagine the tank chase in GoldenEye, the colors seem a little bit more washed out than they do in this. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. And it just it just looks a bit different, and I don't have the technical knowledge to explain what I mean beyond that. But it just, there's something about the look of this film that doesn't look like classic Bond. It looks like a 90s action film.
Well, I can't remember who the DOP is, but it would have been Roger Spottiswood's main cameraman, I imagine. And so he'd be the person who's responsible for lighting the film and giving it that look. Yeah. Off the top of my head, I can't remember who it was for Tomorrow Never Dies.
But yeah, Bond wouldn't say next time I take the elevator, because he is not an American. He would say, if you want, he would say next time I'll take the lift. But that sounds shit. So you wouldn't say that either. You would say, next time I take the stairs. And that is a multinational version that solves the problem.
Yeah. You again, like sometimes you say to me, you hit the nail on the head there, Tommy, and that is the answer. That is it. Now, do you think that when they kick off the glass window and then eventually on the third time they just smash through, in Die Hard there's a very similar thing that he does, but he has a gun, so he shoots and then he gets through the window. Yeah. What is your opinion on them just crashing in?
That was my other complaint, is that it looks a bit weak, that it's just because they don't even kick any harder that third time. They just do it in slow motion, so it seems like there's more force behind them. So it's one of those things where, like we always say, the truly great Bond stunts are when you do something for real, you know, and even that car sequence when he's in the back driving remotely, obviously that's not actually happening like that, but it kind of is at the same time, because the dude that's actually driving that car is the stunt driver, like barricaded into the back of the car driving with screens. So he's kind of doing the real version of what Bond is kind of meant to be doing. He is driving just by using screens kind of in the back of the car. So there's even though that's not part of the story, there's something to be admired about that. That's like, shit, that was actually a very clever and technically skilled thing to be able to pull off. And I know he had to practice for months to be able to do it. Whereas a sequence like this, it feels a bit like, you know that was done in the studio. You know they're not really hanging off a massive skyscraper. You know they're not really kicking through the window. You know what I mean? It's just a bit like, that's my disappointment with that particular section.
No, I agree. And I think it's when scenes make your heart race or make you sort of pay more attention or be on the edge of your seat, obviously in terms of action scenes, that's when they're a good one, and that's when they've got you by the ghoulies, that's when you know you're watching something great. And again, this scene doesn't, like you said, it doesn't quite do that. So all right then, so following on from that, they get outside. Luckily, they find some keys in a motorbike somehow, and they steal this BMW cruiser bike. I do like the fact that they're handcuffed. So initially, Bond is right. He's got the two hands on the wheel, and they're complaining about what's going on. And then they get to a point where Bond's on the accelerator, and LYNN is just on the clutch. And that is quite a good and obviously quite a cool thing to try. What was your opinion on that particular thing?
I must admit, this sequence is probably one of the weaker points for me. And I'll tell you why. So obviously the thought behind that is that in the last film you had Bond in the powerful vehicle. He's in the tank, he's in control, everybody's running from Bond. Whereas this time it's flipping it on its head. So Bond's in the weaker vehicle with the helicopter chasing him, which is, okay, that's a solid idea. I like it. Good stuff. Yeah. It just feels a bit like, how do we make a bike chase interesting? And it's like they did the same thing with a car chase. How do we make that interesting? And bang, they win. That's a great way to do it. And that's a super memorable classic car chase. This bit with the back and forth and the quips between them as she's climbing all over the bike and switching things over. And she's like, don't get any ideas, when she like sits in his lap and stuff. And I'm like, that to me feels a bit cheap and sort of forced. A bit forced. I must admit, I don't think him and Michelle had much chemistry at all. I feel like they were a bit of a, I see why they cast her, because she's obviously very skilled, very talented, and like does all the funky stuff, but I don't think they had much chemistry together at all. Like it does seem forced, their relationship. But do you know whose idea it was to cast her?
Casting director?
No, it was Greg Wilson.
Oh, was it Greg?
Yeah, Greg.
Oh,
yeah,
really?
Can you believe that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Was he like? I didn't even know he was.
Well, he must have been a whippersnapper at that point. Yeah. But yeah,
I suppose they were probably thinking. Well, she probably had just done. Had she done Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon? Was it after that? I can't remember. But anyway, it was around that sort of time where there was a lot of martial arts sort of things going on. So
he must. Yeah. I imagine. I don't know how old Greg is, but I imagine he must be our age, like late 30s. Yeah.
Here's an interesting thing then. How would you have felt if LYNN had not been an ally, but had been like a henchwoman, a bit like a Xenia, but used her martial arts against Bond, rather than a leading lady sort of thing, more of a femme fatale? Do you think that would have worked, or not necessarily?
Maybe, yeah. That's a nice idea, I guess. I feel like, because ultimately, by the time you reach the end of the film and they're macking out on the little sort of wreckage of the boat, I never saw any spark between them ever throughout the whole film. So I don't really believe that, really. So yeah, maybe if her role was more of a Xenia, but then you've just had Xenia, who was an ass-kicking female henchman, so maybe not. But Crouching Tiger came out in 2000, so it was a bit
2000
after this.
Was a bit afterwards. Okay. So basically, in terms of a couple of stunts, then obviously we see her climb around on the bike and stuff like that. They end up going onto the roofs, don't they? And then you must admit that's the pretty epic stunt, is when the helicopter is sort of chasing them, and they look over the road as the helicopter sort of drops down onto the street below, and then they do that massive leap over the helicopter, and that is pretty immense. I do like that bit.
I've got some complaints about a lot of this chase.
Oh,
I
really?
must be honest. Yeah, as much as I love the Brosnan, and I do love this film, this chase does make me wince a bit, and I'll tell you why. The jump is great; it's a great chase.
Yeah. And although the rotor blades were added in post, but that's still
there is. If you look, 15-year-old Tommy was very pleased with the tiny little bit of shagging you see in the background after they go through the roof.
That was great, wasn't it?
Yeah, you get to see like 1.5 thrusts. And then, in the background.
Nice. And she's on top, isn't she?
Absolutely. You've noticed it as well. The concept of the helicopter being that low in the alleyway, you wouldn't do that if you were a helicopter.
The bit where it just comes down straight, I think, is all right. The bit where it tilts with the rotor blades
that's
to try and chop everything,
really start to complain. Like that's just
because if it's going through stalls and everything, that would totally put it out of its alignment.
That helicopter would be completely fucked. And that concept of sliding the bike underneath the rotors and stuff, it's just a bit like you need to suspend your disbelief a bit in a film like this, but that's too much disbelief suspension. I would expect that from a Schwarzenegger film or Rambo or a Van Damme film. I don't want to see that in Bond. You know what I mean? It's just a bit. It's that thing. If you can't do it for real, don't do it. That's my motto.
So, what would you have preferred to have seen instead? Whether it's still a motorbike chase, but something else, or something completely different.
Do you know what I would have had? I tell you what I would have had. I would have still kept the motorbike chase. I'd have still kept the majority of it, right? Yeah. I would have just had Bond be chased by other motorbikes.
Okay, rather than it's a helicopter that's the main issue.
Because that ultimately to get that most of that chase just wouldn't happen because the helicopter can't do that or wouldn't do that. Yeah. So I feel like you could have probably had a really killer motorbike chase where you've got some like ninjas on motorbikes or whatever, like flying along behind them. They're going up on the rooftops. So are the bad dudes, and like having you could still have that big jump. You could have still had all of that stuff, but it would be
totally right.
more realistic in terms of that. Yeah.
And particularly if the villains had sort of much more lighter, maneuverable, almost like stunt bikes, like motocross bikes or whatever, while Bond is on this heavy cruiser, so he's having to work twice as hard to try and get away from them. And he could, that would work really well, particularly as there's all these narrow alleyway which Bond uses to get away from the Range Rovers, which is good. But imagine if you had like all these sort of tight alleyway sort of chase with them after them.
You could have had a real frantic Quantum of Solace style chase, but with bikes. And if you're going to use Michelle's skills. You could have had her jumping around the bike and booting dudes in the face and stuff like that.
And jumping from bike to bike. So she'd go from Bond's bike onto the villains, wreck their neck, so they come off, then she's on the bike. And you could have had all that. Really good action scene around that, couldn't you?
See, to me, that...
I know, well, she was handcuffed. I know there's that part of it.
Yeah. And do you know what? So the original script that they scrapped the Hong Kong angle one, they kept... as I said last time, they kept the pre-title sequence, they kept the sinking of the Devonshire from that original story, and the only other things they had at the time was a bike chase and a car chase without any of the details. It wasn't like coloured in, it was just like, we're going to have those two set pieces at some point in the film. So it's an interesting one, and the theme crops up again and again that they were really up against it time-wise, and there was a lot of things that were like, we didn't have much time, we had to do this in this short space of time and all that kind of stuff. So once again, it's one of those things where it's easy for us to sit here 20 years later and be like, oh, they should have done this, they should have done that. But then when you're up against it and you've got months of preparation and all that kind of stuff already done, it's kind of, you don't have those luxuries a lot of the time, it's just, it is the beast that is filmmaking, but it is what it is.
There we go. Yeah. So basically then to finish off, they're kind of trapped, aren't they? The helicopter's just angled down with a guy with a gun, and then they stop. They notice that little washing line, so they pull out this washing line, and then like we said, they sort of drive underneath the bike, underneath the rotor blades, lift up the washing line into the tail rotor, and then jump in the water as it sort of crashes and explodes. And it's it's a sort of thing where, come to think of it, it's not a scene that gets me overly excited, definitely. Like, I have a lot more fun watching the car chase than I do the bike chase.
Yeah.
I can appreciate some of the stunt work in it, definitely, but you don't really feel they're in danger. And and the helicopter thing, you're right, it is a bit, they could have easily have hidden from it if they just stopped under the roof of somewhere.
Yeah.
Like, how's the helicopter going to know? So they needed something else going on. Even if they had the helicopter or not, they needed, like you said, maybe some other on real all black sort of stealth bike, not a stealth bike as in stealth material, but all black sort of motorbike,
like Street Hawk.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I suppose if you're going to have two sequences like that, there's one they absolutely nailed with the car chase, and then one that for me is just a bit meh. You know, I wouldn't put this bike chase in any montage of classic Bond moments. That would be one that kind of sits out for me. I'd definitely put in the Brent Cross car park chase. I'd put in the Quantum of Solace chase, but I wouldn't put that one in there.
No. Okay, so there we are. That is part 2 of Tomorrow Never Dies. Now, obviously, a quick comparison then. Act 1, Act 2, Part 1, Part 2. What are your opinions of them both compared to one another?
I've definitely got more issues with Part 2, it must be said.
Yeah.
I like I said last time, I really liked Part 1. There was a lot I really loved about it. I felt like you could chop some stuff out and quicken the pace up a little bit and stuff, and especially with the background with the Devonshire and all that kind of stuff, I think you could have got that stuff done quicker. This one, there's a lot of stuff I love. The Bond in the hotel room at the beginning of Part 2, like we talked about today, that to me is an iconic Bondian moment, and I visually it looks the business. I really like that. As much as I don't like the too close for comfort, yes line. You know, I do like the whole interaction between the two of them. It does definitely feel more passionate, you know, especially when it gets a bit bitey. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Did
you ever? I remember. Sorry, just briefly going back in the day, and you obviously styled yourself on Mr. Pierce Brosnan,
big time.
And pre-Goldeneye, I remember you saying that you looked up to Rog to get your kissing technique. Did you then look to Pierce for your biting technique? Did that ever come into the fray, or
let
not
me think
so much?
about the biting? I imagine I probably must have done, because whatever Pierce was doing, I was doing in those days.
And then you got a slap on the face. And let's not do that.
I imagine. They do it in the films. So there's that. I do like the sneaky Bond sequence where he sneaks in, does a bit of safe cracking. That's very nice. So I like that. Obviously, the car chase sequence is a belter. That's an all-time classic car chase as far as I'm concerned. That's definitely going in the montage of classic moments. Things I'm less happy about in Part 2. Do you know what? I think this is pretty solid up until we get to Saigon. I think that's where it starts to go a little bit wobbly for me, that one. The sequence in the building, Carver's Tower, it's kind of like it's all right, but and then the bike chase, so those last two bits for me are a little bit wobbly. What about you?
Probably not too much different, really. Again, like car chase, absolutely loved it. I think the part in the hotel was really nice, and with that news story, the way that worked, I thought that was great. The Halo jump itself, I know it wasn't sort of a big thing, but that was all right. I wasn't too keen on the whole underwater Devonshire bit. It's a bit flat, I suppose. And in terms of the bike, the Carver building and the bike chase, I like the stunt. I like the jump over the helicopter. I thought that was cool, but it is a bit. And I did, from a technical aspect, I could appreciate a few things, but from a story / logical aspect, there were a few things that stood out where I'm a bit like, not sure about that. I think overall, I definitely way prefer the first act to the second, like Part 1 to Part 2.
Me too. Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
I think, for me, I'd say the strongest parts of this is definitely the car chase, and Bond looks so fucking cool in that hotel room bit at the beginning of Part 2. Those are my two favourite bits, I think. Along with the Paris Carver's lovely lingerie that she decided to wear. I thoroughly enjoy that as well. All right then, so that's where we're going to draw the line today. Obviously, we'll be back next time to talk about the final part of Tomorrow Never Dies. So I think it's time to revisit our trivia question of the day, don't you, Chris?
I do. So this trivia question was from Mr. Simon Godwin. Let's have another listen.
How many modes of transport are used by Bond in The Spy Who Loved Me?
How many modes of transport are used by Bond in The Spy Who Loved Me? Right, I'm going to lay down what I know, and then you tell me what you know. Right, so
let's go.
He has a car.
Yes, so the Lotus,
The Lotus. He gets on a boat with Naomi.
Yep, boat with Naomi. Powerboat. We'll call that one, yep.
He gets on the wet bike.
The wet bike, yep.
He gets on a train.
He does. He gets on the train.
He gets in a... Does he get in a helicopter?
He does.
He
Well,
gets
we
it.
see him dangling down from one with Anya. So yeah, he's been in a helicopter. I'd definitely count that as a
Do you see him
helicopter.
dangling down from one? When does
Yeah,
he
before he
dangle?
goes into the submarine, which is another thing. That he
Oh,
goes
of course,
into.
yeah.
You
Oh,
know,
hey, yeah.
yeah.
All right, good. I
Yeah,
didn't have the
yeah.
submarine. Helicopter, that's where I ended,
Yeah.
was the helicopter.
Yeah. Okay.
Submarine 6.
How about camel? Is that allowed?
Oh, yeah, that's a mode of transport.
How about skis or not? Is that pushing the boat out a bit too much?
I say if he includes it, we're happy. If he doesn't, we haven't got it wrong, because that's
or
the
parachute. Or parachute then.
Parachute, yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
I'd say Le Paris oil tanker.
Right, yeah.
Monorail within it. That's got to be another one. What else? Oh, you mentioned boat. He was on another boat on the Nile with Triple X when he's trying to check
That's
the
true.
microphone.
Would you class that as a
Oh
separate...
yeah, I know. Well, powerboat and what are they called?
Whatever
Fleet,
that's called,
whatever.
yeah.
Look, how many is that?
I don't know. But no. Go on.
One more that I can think of. Sorry. At the very end, the escape pod when he comes out of Atlantis.
Oh, yeah.
And potentially the boat at the end that the escape pod gets sucked into with the water.
Whew. All right.
If that's allowed.
I think
I don't know how many we should.
Let's turn it over to Simon and see how deep he's gone with this, because I have a suspicion you might have gone even deeper than Simon did. But let's find out.
Wow.
Let's have a listen.
Hi, it's Simon Godwin here, calling back with the answer to my trivia question, and that was, how many modes of transport are used by Bond in The Spy Who Loved Me? It is all subjective, but I have 16. So we have skis, parachute, speedboat to Atlantis, a wet bike to Atlantis, a car, the Lotus, a submersible, the Lotus again, a submarine, helicopter, an escape pod from Atlantis, a CCTV camera aboard the Leparis, a camel in Egypt, horse and cart in Sardinia, sailboat to Cairo, the Leyland Sherpa van, a train, and the monorail. Thank you. And like I say, keep up the good work.
Mate.
That CCTV thing in the La Paris.
Yeah.
That was a banger. And the what was the other thing? There are a couple there that we missed, I think.
There was, yeah, absolutely. There was me saying, I think you've probably gone deeper than Simon there. And then Simon went even deeper than we ever dreamed possible.
Wow,
So
that is good. Great. What a question, though.
Nice
it's hard
one, Simon.
sometimes to think of it, though, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's like boom, boom, boom. But yeah,
absolutely.
wicked.
Nice one,
Nice
Simon. Good stuff. So, Chris, you know what it's time for
Yes.
now, don't you, my old son?
It is time for the Guess the Quote round.
James Bond. There it is. It's the quote
Lovely.
round.
I like
Now,
it.
last time it was my quote, and
Yes.
I'm going to reperform it for you,
It
Chris.
was.
And I'm interested to see whether you've got this. So, my quote
Okay.
from last time was, any of the opposition around?
Now, I know the line following that is something like, yes, but not in any state to worry about, or something like that.
That is true.
But I
And if
still
you know
can't-
that,
I
you
still
must know the film, surely.
Any of the opposition around? Is it from Russia with Love?
It is from Russia with Love.
Russia with Love, right. Any of the opposition around? Oh, it's got to be with Captain Nash on the train.
Absolutely. That's it.
Yes.
That's exactly it. So after they've gone into the room, he on the train, Red Grant says, any of the opposition around? And then Bond says,
Yeah.
not in any shape to worry about. And then that's
Nice.
it. Yeah.
Okay.
So nicely
wicked.
done. You did a good job there.
All right, I've got a good one for you.
All right.
This week. It's only 2 words. Are you ready?
Yeah.
My quote for this week is, "Oi in." Should I say it again?
Do it again, please.
Okay. My quote is, "All in."
Are you saying all in?
I maybe.
All in. All
Yeah.
right. Interesting.
Okay.
All right,
Yeah.
that's nice. I'll get my
Cool.
thinking cap on for next time. All right,
Cool.
good stuff.
All right.
Now, last time we had
Yes.
a belter of a quote from Dennis James Harden. It was really, really good, and we need to revisit that. and have a little listen.
Yeah.
And then we'll have a see if we can guess who it is. Here it is.
500 kilos. I knew they'd go for it.
So
Now,
good, isn't it?
I almost
so
think
good.
that is actually a clip from the film because that is so spot on. It is.
Do you think he's just edited it off the actual film? I think he must have done.
I think he must have done because it's too good. Now,
Yeah.
who do you think that is, Chris?
Well, I'm going to say the film. I think the film is License to Kill.
The film is License to Kill, and the character would be Truman Lodge.
Yes, I think so, and he's nailed it absolutely perfectly,
Hasn't he? So, should we double check that we got it right, and we'll turn it over to Dennis and see what the answer is.
Hey, Chris. Hey, Tom. This is Dennis James Harden from upstate New York calling back with the answer to my listener quote. That was Truman Lodge in License to Kill, played by Anthony Stark. It's the sequence where they're above the casino watching their favorite TV show, Professor Joe. Professor Joe is collecting money for them, and they're monitoring the amounts of cash that are coming in, and Truman Lodge is getting excited there. So, Truman Lodge and License to Kill. Anyway, keep up the good work, guys. I love every podcast you guys put out. It gives us Bond fans something to look forward to every 2 weeks. All right, take care, guys. Bye.
Nice one. Absolutely.
Yes.
Pin the tail on the donkey. Do you know what struck me there?
Go on.
He obviously mentioned the actor who played Truman Lodge, and his name is Anthony Stark, which is obviously Tony Stark, which is Iron Man. Isn't that funny?
Amazing. Yeah, that's really, really cool.
Do you know what? Back in the day, do you remember an actor called Sean Patrick Flannery that played young Indiana Jones? Did you ever watch that show?
Yeah, I can picture him. Yeah.
I thought they were the same person back in the day, and it wasn't until relatively recently that I realised that they weren't the same person. If you look at Truman Lodge, right? Anybody that's at home, you can jump on the Googles, and you look at his face, and then you look at Sean Patrick Flannery. Let me just get it up on the old screen. They are almost the same dude as far as I'm concerned. Yeah, not so much now, but if you look at him,
what's the other dude's name? Sean Patrick Flannery.
Sean Patrick Flannery, and but if you look at him,
I know who you mean. Yeah.
If you look at him from the young Indiana Jones period and compare him, when you put them side by side, you can obviously see the differences. But they almost look like the same kind of person. I bet they went out for the same roles back in the day.
Nice. That's interesting. I'll check that out, definitely.
Very nice. Okay, good stuff. So we have a new JBR listener quote from good old Pablo Schaffner this week. I like Pablo Schaffner's name. It's a good name.
It is a good name. Now, would that be a German baddie in a war film, or could it possibly be in a Bond film as a henchman, Pablo Schaffner, or would it be a Western? What are you thinking when you hear Pablo Schaffner?
I feel like Pablo Schaffner would be a Fleming character, because Fleming would blend two things together, wouldn't he? You'd make them a bit foreign, so if they weren't British, they were obviously a villain, and he would be a cross between an Italian and a German. Pablo Schaffner, Italian mother, German father. Bang! There he is. Bring him up in the circus. We've got a Fleming character right there.
So Pablo, if you are a part of a circus, please let us know.
Indeed. So let's turn it over to Pablo and see what he's got for us this week.
Hi guys, Pablo Schaffner here with a listener quote. They didn't go anywhere. They just disappeared.
Oh, that rings a very distant bell.
Nice. He didn't really sound Italian German though, Tom.
He didn't, did he? I was really barking up the wrong tree with that one. But
that's a really good quote though. Nice one, Pablo. I like it.
Nice one, Pablo, indeed.
I know that.
Yeah, I do as well. And it's going to come to my mind, but I can't quite place it. Anyway, it's time for...
Who wrote the score for Live and Let Die? Who played Helga Brandt? How did she die? Who wants to stockpile the water in the Nivea? It's Tommy Trivia.
That's right, it's time for Tommy Trivia. This is where Chris breaks out the Trivial Pursuit deck and quizzes me on the questions. So what do you got for me this time?
We are going to start this week with locations.
Okay.
Question 1. On which island is Dr. No's secret base?
Crab Key.
Yes. Okay, on to crew and behind the scenes. Question 2. What studio stage had to be rebuilt for A View to a Kill after burning to the ground?
That would be the Albert R. Broccoli stage at Pinewood.
Ooh.
Is it not?
Tommy.
That was always burning down there, wasn't it?
You are right, but you're also wrong in a weird way.
The 007 stage.
Yes.
Oh, that's what I meant.
And when it was remade, it became the Albert R. Broccoli 007 stage. Yes, there we go. But I'll give you that because you kind of knew what was going on. Okay, casting characters. Who met his Waterloo according to Bond?
That would be good old Joe Don Baker.
What's his
my
name?
brain. I hate it when my brain does this to me. Hold on.
You've got it. Come on.
Oh, fuck. Hold on. Stop it. Joe
I'll
Don
give you
Baker. He is...
I'll give you initials
Brad
if you
Whittaker.
need it. Yes.
Thank you.
Yes. Lovely. Okay, great stuff. On to the films. Who does Bond kill in an elevator? This isn't actually true.
Who does Bond kill in an elevator?
Yeah.
Peter Franks? Is that what they're barking at?
That's what they're doing, but it's not true because he doesn't kill him inside the elevator, does he? Because they go out and then he knocks him over the railing with the fire extinguisher and then chucks it down after him.
He starts killing him in an elevator, I suppose, by bruising him up. Yeah.
If they put fighting in an elevator, I think that'd be better. But I'll give you the mark anyway. Okay, so finally, question number 6 on the vehicles. If you get this, you get a clean sweep.
Lovely.
What does Bond use to disable the centrifuge trainer in Moonraker?
His little wrist dart gun.
He does, a wrist dart gun. Excellent. Oh, no, there is one more. I beg your pardon. Sorry, wrist dart gun. We do have one more.
Okay.
Final question, gadgets and weapons. How does Bond survive being stabbed in the heart?
How does Bond survive being stabbed in the heart?
Shall I give you a clue?
When does he get stabbed in the heart?
It's in Moonraker.
It's in
Moonraker? No. It's in Octopussy. Sorry, in Octopussy.
It's in Octopussy.
Yeah.
How does stabbed in the? Oh, do you mean he doesn't get stabbed in the heart? They try to, and he avoids it.
How?
It's
something prevents him from being stabbed in the heart, basically.
So they're not talking about the buzzsaws, are they? That's not.
No, think
is,
tuk-tuk chase.
Is it a big load of money?
Yes, a big load of wad of cash. But there's two really badly worded questions there. How does Bond survive being stabbed in the heart? Well, he wasn't stabbed in the heart.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's bad. And who does Bond kill in an elevator? That's rubbish as well.
Yeah.
I'm getting don't like it when they do rubbish questions. So
Tommy Trivia's cancelled this week.
I'm giving you an extra mark because they're so rubbish. So you're on 8 million out of 6. Anyway,
nice. I like that.
Cool. Well done.
That'll
nice
keep
one.
me going for a while. Righty ho then, Chris. It is time for. It's the music cue. Okay, this is where Chris obviously gives us a little 5-second snippet of Bond music, and we have to guess what film it is. And it's not from this Chris; it's from another Chris. That was last week's clip, wasn't it? So should we have a little reminder?
Yeah, let's have a listen. It was absolute beauty. It was too. Right.
What do you
think? Have any? Well, I might already know this answer because I actually sent one back as soon as he sent the clip saying, "Oh, it's definitely from this film." He's like, "Yeah," and I was like, "I think it's this scene." And he's like, "No," and I was like, "Oh shit, I thought it was that scene." And then it suddenly clicked, and then I sent him a second thing, and he said, "Yeah, it's from that scene." So it took me a couple of guesses, but I do know the answer to this one.
See, I don't think it is, but it could fit in Majesty's quite nicely. That little phrase.
I know exactly what you're getting at because there are cues that sound very similar, like with the big horns and stuff, but it's not from Majesty. I'd go later. I'd go a fair bit later.
I would go later as well. Yeah. Is it A View to a Kill?
Yes, it is A View to a Kill.
Right. Okay.
Right.
Yes.
Now. Brilliant.
Now, I think my mind goes to two particular things, and I don't actually think it's either of them, but I'm just going to chalk them off.
Just tell them and I'll yeah.
Jumping off the Eiffel Tower.
Yeah.
And the other one is hanging off the bottom of the Zeppelin by the Golden Gate.
I'm going to tell you what, one of those was my first choice and I got it wrong.
Mm-hmm.
That was the Eiffel Tower.
Right.
And then when I did my second guess, I got it right. And your second guess is very similar, but not quite right. So in other words, there is a scene that involves something you just mentioned, but it's not when you.
Is it when the Zeppelin kind of inflates?
No, but it is quite similar to
Is
that.
it when Bond,
I think you could,
the fucking Zeppelin is coming along and what's the name? Stacy gets grabbed and pulled into the Zeppelin and off she goes.
I'd say you're going earlier than that. It might even be the first time that you see.
Oh, I know what it is.
Yes.
Anybody else want to drop out?
Yeah.
There it is.
Nice. Good one. That was a great bit of music cue. So cheers to Chris Hayes for that. That was brilliant. Really good music cue.
Nice one indeed. So have we got a new one this week, Chris?
We do. This week is one of mine, and let's have a listen.
Oh, we're going old school there, I can tell.
Yeah. Okay.
All right. I'm going to play that one more time because that's so quick. Hold on.
It was a short one.
All right, cool. Nice.
Okay. I'll give you a clue. If I'd looped it, you probably would have still had the same in the actual soundtrack if I'd sort of extended that.
Got you. All right.
But,
Nicely done. Okay, we will find out the answer to that next time. Answers on a postcard to PO Box 007, James Bond Radio Street, London. Do you remember when you had to do that? Send your answers on a postcard. Those were the days, weren't they?
PO Box. They were brilliant, weren't they?
Yeah, they were good. All right, cool stuff.
Yes.
So James Bond Radio will return with Tomorrow Never Dies Part 3, and then we're getting even closer to the 90-second review episode. So if you haven't gathered your thoughts yet, start gathering. I know some of you fellas and ladies like to really script them out and really give it some thought. Some of you like to just fly by the seat of your pants. So if you're a scripter, get started now. You got 90 seconds to fill.
And even if someone's already got theirs in the bag and they might have watched the film all already and they're ready to go, how can they leave a voicemail, Tom? What do they have to do?
They must head over to jamesbondradio.com and click on the button on the right-hand side that says send voicemail. And then you have a 90-second window to send your message. So you can do that on your phone or you can do it on your computer, one of the two, but there it is. But I do feel bad sometimes because some people, when they leave their reviews and it cuts off before they've actually finished, and I'm like, I wish I knew what they said, what the next bit was. But so be aware, it will be brutal. It will cut you off, because it sometimes feels like when we actually broadcast these that it's almost like we're going, not interested in this anymore. Boop, and click to the next one. But it's obviously not that. Harsh. It's just the timer running out.
I never thought of that.
Yeah. I don't like this review. So make sure you get it in within 90 seconds.
You can always time yourself, can't you? You can always have like a little stopwatch or something beside you and speed up if you see the deadline coming. Just talk really, really quickly.
Indeed. I do remember one of Jack Lugo's recent reviews. He had so much to say. He just was like, and he managed to get it in the 90 seconds. I was very impressed. It was probably the most content-heavy review we've ever had in 90 seconds.
Wow.
That one. I forget which film it was from now, but he was motoring through it. It was very impressive. Good one, Jack.
Nice one, Jack. Yeah.
All right, good stuff. James Bond Radio will return next week with Tomorrow Never Dies Part 3. Until then, I've been Tom Sears.
I've been Chris Wright.
And we'll see you next week, everybody.
See you next week. Bye.
Bye.